A few words then to kick it off. I think probably most of you on here have seen this, have heard me talk a little bit, but for any of you there that that don't know me or my business, my name is Barry Cranford. I'm the founder of the London Java community, and I also run a recruitment company called RecWorks. So here at RecWorks, we try to find ways that recruitment can be a force for good in the tech industry beyond just getting people jobs. And what that means is that we want to offer career development things like user groups, mentor introductions, workshops, and things like this speaker initiative. And we want to do it as much of it as we can completely for free. So what that means to us is we make placements, so we get paid just traditional recruitment to find talent, and then take a bunch of that revenue and drive that back into the community initiatives. So it all came about when back in 2006, 2007, I was calling Java developers, trying to find people that were looking for work. Most of them weren't. And after being hung up on for about 100 times, I decided there must be a better way that we could do it. So I started asking people what help they needed, what we could do that might add value. And that led to an idea which became the LJC. And here we are, 13 years, 8,000 members and 500 odd events later. So working in recruitment is interesting for this kind of thing, for career developments, because you get to see what some people do that takes their career further ahead quicker than other people, especially when you're working in the same market, the same group of people. And so one of the things that we saw over and over and over again was that people would get involved in speaking, and very few people do, and those that do seem to elevate themselves above others, and then very quickly their career and often their whole life changes. So what we're doing with this group, the Aspiring Speakers Group, is trying to take that principle and get a lot more people to do it and create this kind of conveyor belt, a new generation of speakers. So that's what this is all about. So we've got a bunch of new speakers today, and we've got some experienced speakers. So I'm going to introduce you now to our first speaker of the day, who is Helen Scott. Helen, are you all set? Are you all ready?
Yep, I'm good.
Awesome. So here's Helen Scott with How Did You Find This Talk? Helen.
Awesome. Cheers, Barry. Okay, I am going to try something a little different today, and I'm going to ask you to just complete a really quick poll. I've hopefully just succeeded in launching it. It is one question. How did you find my talk? Specifically mine, rather than a general LJC promotion. Did you see something that I shared on social media, or are you just here because you love the LJC, which is obviously fantastic as well. So I'll just give you 20, 30 seconds. How many people? We've got 25 on the call. We've got 10 responses. This is good. This is great. Keep them coming. 12, another few more to vote. Okay, I'm gonna call it at 15 because I have made my point, I think, at that point. So let me just share my screen and I will get started on the presentation. Okie dokie, that one. Brilliant. Am I sharing the right thing? Give me some thumbs up. Lovely. Cheers, Barry. Okay, so welcome to How Did You Find This Talk? Okay, a little bit of a spoiler alert. That was a little bit cheeky of me. You didn't, and I can tell you why that is. I didn't tell anyone that I was talking. I didn't promote it on Twitter. I didn't put it on LinkedIn. I did tell one of my colleagues. I didn't actually tell most of my colleagues. I didn't tell any of my friends in the community. I put zero effort into promoting this talk, and that's why you didn't find it. There's no fault of your own. I also used a fairly obtuse title to make sure that you couldn't find it. So that brings me to my point that I put a lot of effort into creating this presentation and this talk today. I spent some evenings thinking about what I wanted to speak to you about. I spent a couple of hours crafting my slides. I spent an hour or so this morning doing some dry runs. I put a lot of myself and my time into this talk, and then I didn't promote it. Why would I do that? So maybe I like small audiences. Sometimes I do, especially at the moment. Maybe I'm scared that I think I have nothing useful to share with you. And some days, yes, there's that little voice going on in my head. But first and foremost, I wanted to make a point. And that point is that we as human beings struggle to promote ourselves. I definitely struggle with it. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. So why do we struggle to promote ourselves? For me, when I've been someone said, oh, you should promote yourself, Helen. And the phrases that pop into my head are, it's narcissistic, we're up our own, insert word here, it's self-serving, it's all these negative phrases that we get of why do we struggle to promote ourselves? So I thought, well, if I keep listening to all these phrases, I'm never going to get past this. I'm never actually going to learn how I can promote myself, because I don't want to be narcissistic. I don't want to be self-serving. That's not what I'm here for. So I came up with a plan whereby I separate what I am promoting. And I stopped thinking about it as me promoting myself, and I started thinking about it as me promoting my stuff, bunny ears. And that actually makes it a lot easier, because you take yourself completely out of the equation, and then you're just dealing with something that's really very materialistic. It's stuff. It's stuff you've put effort in, but it's not you, it's stuff. So if we think about stuff, how then can we get better at promoting it? And this is very interesting. So when I first started creating content a little while ago now, a very good friend took me to one side and she said, Helen, initially, when you create all this content, no one's going to read or watch it anyway. And I was like, rude. But actually, that was a really good thing for me to think about it, because it meant I could stop being quite so self-obsessed and self-absorbed in what I was creating. And I could actually focus on the content, focus on finding my voice, focus on finding my style, work out what works for me. And I could put content out there, and I could have much less fear of judgment, because 10 Twitter followers, fine. Here's, send it to your mum. It's good. Your mum's not going to judge you. So that's the first thing that I did, but it didn't last very long. It was a short-term thing, and it got me over the content of putting content out there. But then it faded, and it faded because I put all this time and effort into creating this stuff. I was like, well, I'm putting all the effort in, but no one's reading it. That's a bit rubbish. So the second thing that I do, use communities like this. That, this is a very safe, it is a very supportive space. Barry and Dom go way above and beyond to create that for you, and the opportunities available to you are immense, quite frankly. Third thing, believe in yourself. You have something worthwhile to say. You can start small, you can build it up, but I guarantee you there are people out there that want to listen, and they want to read, and they want to hear what you have to say. Something else I've done that's helping me to get more comfortable, I've made a website. Everything I do, even these talks, I put them on there. I put everything I do. I did a YouTube live stream last week. I totally forgot to mute my own YouTube live stream. I put it on my website anyway. No one shouted at me for it. So why should you do that? Why should you invest all this effort in getting comfortable? I'll tell you why. Your experience is unique. Your knowledge is interesting. Your viewpoint's fascinating. It's yours alone. And others will benefit from you sharing that journey. There's numerous other people out there right now, and they are walking the same path that you're walking. They might just be a couple of meters to the side, but they are navigating the same muddy puddle that you're navigating. That's why you should share it. Something else, there is quite honestly nothing better in the world than someone messaging you or posting publicly and saying, that was cool, you helped me. That is an immense feeling. And a personal goal that I'd like to share with you about why I am working really hard to get comfortable with this. Wouldn't it be cool if your reputation slightly preceded you when we're allowed to go to conferences again? So in summary, promote it. Don't keep it to yourself. Let others know you're here. You have something to share. I want to hear it. I bet others do too. And unfortunately, I totally screwed up my last slide, but it is this tweet. That is why you should do it, because that made my week. Potentially, it might make my month, because content that I created, someone found valuable. And that's it. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Helen. Appreciate that. And so true. It's some really good advice. I think there's a lot of that was, or some of that was covered in the event we had on Tuesday about conferences and people getting comfortable with it. So yeah, no, I couldn't agree more with that. Does anyone have any questions for Helen there? Dom.
Please, can you give a longer talk on that for me? This was amazing and I loved it. Can we talk about it later?
Sure, thanks, Dom.
Oh yes, excited. I'll email you.
That wasn't a commitment. That was just a
well,
we all caught it. We all caught it. It's being recorded as well, Helen. So perfect. Just need to confirm the date now. Okay, great. Thank you. Dom, could you post up the feedback link for me? There should be a link coming up in your chat window. It should be in the bottom right-hand corner. Any feedback that you've got, really, really appreciate if you could leave it, even if it's just a few words as on the multiple choice. And yeah, any thoughts that you've got on top of that, then please do share them. But thank you very much for that, Helen. So who is next on the agenda? We have Mathew, who agreed to my call on that at channel thing on the LJC Slack, which I am always scared when I do, but thank you so much for doing that about an hour ago. So Mathew, if you're ready to go on automated test writing.
Yes, thanks very much. I appreciate it. All right, so I'm going to share my IDE here. So my name is Mathew Lodge. I'm CEO of a small startup company in Oxford, and we do developer tools. And what I'm going to show you is what we call DiffBlue Cover, which is a tool that automatically writes unit tests for Java. And what I'm going to do here is show you how easy that is, and we're going to take a look at kind of what's the current state of the art in automated test generation. So this is Spring Pet Clinic, for those of you who are familiar with the Spring framework. So Pet Clinic is an example application. It's a web-based vet management system. And I'm just going to click Write Tests. And we are going to get started down here, writing some tests. And you can see that things have kicked off, and off we go. So while I get started, this is a free plugin for this is DiffBlue Cover Community Edition. So if I go to Preferences here, it's just a plugin. You can find it in the marketplace for IntelliJ, and install it yourself. It doesn't cost anything, and it's free to use inside of IntelliJ for writing tests for open source. And obviously, we're hoping that you love it so much that you buy a license, or your company buys a license, but it is free to use forever. So in Spring Pet Clinic, I picked owner controller because controllers are typically where the logic lives in a Spring application. And so you can see that a lot of this code up at the top of the class here is fairly boring, and it's things like persisting information into a model. And then you can see that things start to get a little more interesting when we get down here to the process find form. So when you're going to find an owner, we've got some actual logic. We're checking things, and you've got different code paths happening. So that's good. I just saw an error message pop up, so that's how you know this is a real demo. It's real and it's live.
Don't know if we've lost Mathew there.
He's gone very still.
He certainly has, unless he's pausing for effect. Mathew, yep, there you go. You back?
I'm back, hopefully.
He's back. He's back. Right, you're back.
All right. Yeah, I'm getting messages about my internet connection being unstable, so sorry about that.
No worries. No worries.
Okay. Okay. So you can see that in the event log, we've got a couple of messages here about skipping test generation. So one of the things that you say here is that we're skipping, we're not going to write any tests for a trivial constructor. And the purpose there is to try and make the test be as compact as possible and not be noisy. And so we are going to test constructors anyway, because we're going to call them in order to create objects in order to write a unit test. So we don't write separate tests just for the constructors, setters, and getters, things like that. We also don't write tests for things that are basically callbacks for the Spring framework. That's, again, they get covered elsewhere. And so you can see we've been writing tests as we've gone along here. So these tests have shown up over in the test area. So I can click on this, and we can see the code that's been written. This has been written by DiffBlue Cover. It's based on essentially reinforcement learning. So what we're doing is we're looking for tests. So we write a test that we think is a good starting point, and we then change the test, mutate the test, we run it against the method under test. We try and find input objects and values that will make for an interesting test, and we'll exercise the different paths of the code. So we look at the coverage, we adjust our strategy, we write another test, we test that. and we iterate through this loop. So we're essentially doing a probabilistic search of the space of potential tests for a particular method. So the init forms tests are pretty boring because they're about creating objects and persisting them. You can see here things get slightly more interesting in this test where we try and choose data to feed into tests that looks human and something that you would recognize, so it's easy to read the test. So in this, for example, we've got Jane Doe. She lives in Oxford, of course, on Main Street, and she has a 10-digit phone number and all those kinds of things. So this is a combination of using information from the code itself and some heuristics. As I said, these are kind of boring, so I'm going to keep scrolling. Oops. Until we get into the find form, where things got more interesting. So if I go look at the find form, then the first thing you can see, the first sort of logic thing here is if we get no one is found, then we go one way. Otherwise, if we get exactly one, then we go another way, and we go and essentially redirect to a particular page for that owner. Otherwise, if you get multiple results, you get the owner's list. And so what you'll see here is we're writing a series of tests that will cover those different branches and those different flows through the application. We automatically mock the repository call here, the find call, because this is a unit test. We don't want it to go off and need a database or anything else on the backing store. We want this to run very quickly as a unit test. So we create the mock for that particular thing. We also mock the call in because again, we want it to run fast, so we don't want to start a web server or anything like that. So the nice thing about Spring is that there's a canonical way to do all these things. And so we like Spring applications because we can write much better tests, much more readable tests with the correct mocks and so on. So the first one's fairly boring. Essentially what we're looking to do is make sure that in the null case, we go back to the find owners page. It's slightly more interesting on the next one where we've got a single owner. And so we create an owner, then we use that to create a mock here for the return. And so what we're looking to see is that with that controller, we've exercised that logic so that we get to exactly one owner, right? So owners/1, because we set the ID to 1 back up here. So we're checking that we've got the result, that the size is 0, and that we get the redirect to the owner's page. And then on the third one here, we're going to create 2 owners and set their IDs. And then we're looking to make sure that we get to the owner's list, right? So we've got multiples. So we've covered all of the different branches here. So on Pet Clinic, we get about 93% code coverage according to Jacoco. That's the end of my presentation. This is something that you can go try yourselves, and we hope you like it.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Mathew. Does anyone have any questions for Mathew at all on that?
Yeah, I got just a quick one. I'm sorry, I don't think I caught the name of the tool. You may have mentioned it at the beginning.
Oh, well, I'll pay you later. This is great, right? This is DiffBlue Cover. So the name of the company is DiffBlue, and Cover is our product. This is community edition. It's free. You can if you just search for DiffBlue in the JetBrains marketplace, you will find it.
How about that? Amazing. That's a plant, isn't it, Mathew?
Yeah, that was great.
Okay,
I'll ask a question and I'll take a $5 next time you see me as well. So my question would be, how would this compare to something like, obviously you're kind of testing a controller here. How would it compare to using something like Spring Cloud Contract or a more contract-driven development approach?
That is a great question that I do not know the answer to. And we'd be happy to have that conversation with you offline where I can get somebody who knows more about contracts.
Sure, cool.
Right, thank you.
Great, thanks, Mathew, and thank you, Carsten and Jim, for the questions there. Okay, great. So next up, I believe, is Sam, isn't it? Sam, are you there?
Yep. Hi, everybody. Can you hear me? Okay.
All good. Yeah. All good.
Okay.
Sam, are you screen sharing? Because I haven't co-hosted you yet. Let me.
Yes, I am. If that's all right.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah,
Yep.
I've just added you now.
Thank you. Okay. Oh, where is the slide? Okay. There we go. Is it? Can you still hear me? Because it went a bit funny then on Zoom.
Yeah, can hear you fine. Can see you. It's obviously not in presentation mode, but you can see your screen there.
Okay, that's good. Okay.
Perfect.
So, hi everybody. My name's Sam, and my talk today is based on 3 things I've learned since joining the Aspiring Women Speakers Group. As you can tell, I've done a Halloween-based theme presentation deck, which is Halloween weekend, but hopefully I won't scare you into doing presentations and scare you off this topic. So just a brief introduction to myself and I suppose how I joined the group and 3 things I've learned since joining the group. So a brief introduction to myself. So I've been looking to do, I suppose, public speaking and presentation skills for a while. My current job opportunity doesn't really allow me to do it because I'm quite backstage. I do a lot of research and analytics, particularly more on the research side of things. However, during lockdown, I went through a career change from marketing to user experience and design, which is very communication based and presenting back to clients about findings from research and just helping them build, I suppose, a better product and business service for the user. So I went through in terms of an urgency that I need to find a speaker group that I can join and start presenting and practice these skills. So I went through quite a few in London, and I think it was in early September, I joined the LJC and Aspiring Women Speakers Group through, I think it was a Meet a Mentor scheme. And so far this is my 2nd talk, and I've got another one next week, and I've been attending roundtables and talks about speaking, particularly about, I suppose, trying to encourage, I suppose, women to attend talks and actually speak up and do these sort of presentations. So far, it's been absolutely fantastic, my experience, to sort of learn how to grow in public speaking. And yeah, I think it's, I would like to share, like, I suppose, 3 things that I've learned so far as being part of the Aspiring Women Speakers Group. So I think the first thing I've learned from joining is seeking guidance and building a network. So I think that's been particularly key in terms of growing my confidence and actually surrounding myself with people who want to, I suppose, want the same thing. They want to grow in confidence with public speaking, be heard, and just grow in general in terms of how they present themselves to the wider community. I'd also like to make a shout out to Mag, who is my speaking mentor, coach, who has been absolutely brilliant. She's helped me develop myself further in terms of understanding how I want to present, my values, and I suppose pushing me into opportunities where I personally don't feel like I'm ready for, but actually once doing these sort of talks, I feel so much more confident and yeah, just ready to go for more. And I don't think if I didn't join this group, I wouldn't have got that sort of confidence and, I suppose, experience to actually do these opportunities to sort of present to you guys. So yeah, my I suppose number 2 has been be yourself and authentic. I think that's one thing, I suppose, when I decided to do presentation skills and public speaking training, I thought, okay, I have to always be in this sort of same mindset of being formal, looking professional looking, and just, I think the one thing I've definitely learned from joining the group is the fact that you have to have your own style. So there was a talk I attended a couple weeks ago by May Berenson. I hope I got her name right, but it was an amazing talk to actually hear somebody else, I suppose, aspiring woman who actually has done well with her, I suppose, speaking career, and actually developed that her own style in terms of going from standard, okay, going black trousers and black top, to actually bringing her own style and her own unique take on things. So she was saying a story that she actually went to conferences with some R2D2 shoes, and they are so amazing, and it I suppose makes her story more relatable to people. And I think I would like to do a bit more of those within my talk. I mean, okay, today I've done a Halloween-based theme, and I'm quite wacky and colourful, so I've kind of brought a little bit of my style to talks, but hopefully with my own storytelling and my own personal brand, I would like to sort of bring that more over to these talks. So that's been another key thing I've learned so far whilst joining the group. And the third thing has been find and seek opportunities. I think this has been the main point, and I suppose the biggest learning point that I've learned so far since joining the group. For me, it's more so about having that opportunity like these, like doing either 5-minute talks, 10-minute talks, or however long you like, and actually get that experience. because if you don't practice, you can't get that confidence, you can't get that opportunity to grow. And for me, having these, I mean, a couple of weeks ago, I've done probably no talks at all, not even speaking up in meetings at work. And through having these opportunities to do these talks and getting feedback and engaging with different types of people, it's been a fantastic opportunity for myself to personally grow and know that I can keep growing, get feedback, and keep delivering on these sort of presentations. And I'm very thankful for the group to give me these opportunities to actually feel more confident and actually feel like I should be growing. So that's the end of my presentation. So to sum up, I suppose my talk, the Women's Inspiring Speaker Group has been fantastic growth opportunity for myself for public speaking and presentations. It's improved my public speaking confidence. I've met some amazing people and networked with a few people as well. And it's pushed me into opportunities to do more public speaking and present more in the future. So hopefully it hasn't been too ghoulish, my presentation, and I hopefully you've enjoyed it. And thank you very much for listening, and have any questions you may have about the talk.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Sam. I think it's so true what you were saying about being nudged into doing these things that, like you said, Mag's given you a fair nudge. I can so imagine her doing it to do things that you don't quite feel ready for. And just how many people we speak to that say exactly the same thing, that kind of do it, don't feel ready, do it anyway. And then, within a few years, you kind of just see the change that it's made. So yeah, looking forward to seeing that in a few years, where your career takes you.
Thank you.
I love the slides.
Oh, thank you very much.
Does anyone have any questions for Sam at all?
Yeah, I thought the talk was, sorry, go on, Chris.
No, you go ahead. Yeah, I think you got in first.
Oh, sorry. Okay, I thought the talk was really good. And I just wondered, what are your plans for your next steps?
My next steps is I've got a 10 to 15 minute talk next week, actually. So I'm going to expand on, I suppose for me, it's going into more mentorship side of things. And that's what I kind of want to talk about next. But I think for me, it's having those opportunities to just build up experience at the moment. I don't, I suppose, have any key topics, but I think it's more personal development. I'm going into that side of things.
Awesome.
Cool. Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Sam. Appreciate that. Okay, so moving on then to our fourth talk. Tan, are you ready? Are you screen sharing?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, all good, all
awesome. Good. Can you see my screen? Awesome. So thank you, Barry, for the opportunity. As Barry said, I'm Tan. I'm a digital safety advocate. Also, I'm due for a haircut. I know I'll get it soon. I'm just scared about the COVID thing. And we are about to get to a topic that is security questions. Okay. Like I said, I'm a digital safety advocate. I talk about how important it is, and I'd like to convey these things to general public instead of tech enthusiasts, because they are less knowledgeable about these things. So what are security questions? Just to give a brief, that whenever you sign up for a website or a service, you have a set of questions you have to pick from. These are sort of a backup in case you forget your password or things like that happen, or someone's trying to gain access to your account and the computer suspects that it's not you, right? These are cliche personal questions. The reason I say personal questions with air quotes is because they're supposed to be personal questions, but now that we're in the age of social media and stuff, people like to share things. Everything's out there, right? For example, mother's maiden name. I go down your Facebook profile and scroll down enough, I'll find it out, right? For example, if you are one of these odd 80,000 people, you have given away potentially the answer to your security question or the security question of someone you're related to, right? And things like these happen. People share their phone numbers, people share their certificates, business IDs on social media and public profiles, right? And not only online. If I meet you in person, I could ask you, also you have a dog, what's his name? I could ask you, is your first pet? Right now I know the name of your first pet. That's the answer to your security question, right? Now you might be thinking that there are OTPs, there are two-factor authentication services that people use, right? But what happens is people are lazy with passwords and using these types of services, right? For a fun fact, what do you think is the most common password in the world, right? The most common password in the world is "I love you" and "sunshine." And this is not old data. This is about a year old, right? And this is, we're talking about general people who use these passwords. You might think that IT professionals and tech enthusiasts take more steps with it, right? Now, there was a study conducted last year, November, where they took IT professionals from US, UK, France, and Germany, and turns out 67% of IT professionals don't use two-factor authentication. And then we wonder why companies keep getting hacked. 70% of cybercrime happens because of human error, because of things like phishing and social engineering attacks. Okay. Now, because all of these things are happening, you might think, what else can you do outside of your two-factor authentication and having a strong password? What can you do to ensure that your security questions are safe, right? The simple answer to that question is lie. When you're asked a security question when signing up for a service, they're not asking you to be honest. They want confidentiality, right? For example, if the question is, what was the name of your first school? I don't know, make it up, something like Hogwarts School of Existential Crisis. Okay, something that is imaginative, user imagination, something you wouldn't give away in a conversation talking to someone. For example, if I'm talking to Barry, I wouldn't go, you know where I go to school? Hogwarts School of Existential Crisis. You know, it wouldn't come up in a conversation like that. And it wouldn't be something I would share on my social media profile. So these are things that you can keep in mind when you're answering your security questions, because if you don't want to use two-factor authentication, then you can do this as well. Please use two-factor authentication. Just please do it because it's important. Okay. As an advocate, I have to tell you this, right? And for this sake, I've started sharing content on social media under the hashtag #BeYourOwnGuardian, right? Because Instagram or Facebook can't go through every single account and hold you accountable for your actions. So yeah, that's it for my presentation for now. And I'll take any questions if there are, and back to Barry.
Brilliant. Thanks, Dan. Appreciate that. So Hogwarts School of Existential Life Crisis. I like it.
His new password.
Yeah. Does anyone on the call have any questions for Tan on internet security or on his talk?
I got one, Tan. So if you make up answers, how do you remember them? Don't you have to write them down?
Make them weird enough that you remember them, right? They should be weird enough and funny enough for you to remember them, but don't share it with other people. That's it.
Very nice. Okay, brilliant. All right, thanks for that, Tan. Appreciate that. Dom, can you drop the feedback link, Dom, if you're still there? I can't see you out there, but if you are, if you could drop, oh, there you are. Yeah, so people, if you could please leave some feedback for Tan's talk and for Sam's, that would be phenomenal. And now we have the final talk of the day before we're going to move over to a Q&A with Jim. So this is another Halloween special. Steve Poole with the Halloween TV, or why it might really be watching you back. So Steve, if you're ready.
I am. Let me just, well, I'm almost ready. Hold on. I have to do something slightly weird. Okay, right. So let me try and share. Oh, that one? Yeah. Okay. Can you see a scary picture? Is that it? Yes? Okay, right, cool.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, I had this new TV, new screen, and as I said, it's so big that I lose the mouse, but I've just fixed that. Okay, So I'm going to break all the rules that I tell people about doing 5-minute talks, which is I've got loads of slides, but there we go. So how long ago was it you asked me to do this, Barry? Not that long.
90 minutes or so.
Yeah, 90 minutes. So I'm going to tell you a story. Right, so let's get going. Okay, so here's the title. Here's the background. So I talk at conferences, and one of the subjects I talk about is cybercrime, because it's of interest to me. So I go to a conference, and I do my talk. And then afterwards, this guy comes up, and he tells me a story. And I go, ooh, that's interesting. That's very interesting. So I go to another conference, as I do, and I insert this story into the cybercrime conversation I'm having. And afterwards, somebody comes up to me and says, that happened to me too. That happened to our customers or to our company. So that's the story I'm going to tell you. So are you sitting comfortably? So there is this company. It's an American company. It's in the Midwest, and it's a large engineering company, but they have a building, large building, there is nobody around them. It's just them, a few trees and fields, and that's it. So they're an up-and-coming company. They want to get in, always trying to do new things. So they buy a smart TV because they want to put it on the wall and they want to show off all the news and things that's going on within the company. They want to be modern. And so they bought a very big TV, and it's got an Ethernet port, and they're going to plug that into their Ethernet, intranet, and away they go. And that's fine. That's lovely. Unfortunately, not very long after they've done this, they realized that apart from their official SSID Wi-Fi thing, there's another one turning up. So they search everywhere for this, right? Engineering, and they're wandering around, they're going, somebody's got a router or somebody's doing something. We're going to find them. And they walk around and they're doing this. And just by luck, they discover that, in fact, it's the TV. They turn the TV off, SSID goes away, they turn it back on, ba-ding, SSID. They're going, this is a bit weird. So they talk to the people who they bought the TV from. And they even went and talked to the people who made this TV. And both of these people said, no, that TV doesn't come with Wi-Fi. So this is an engineering company. So they take the TV apart. They lift the lid of the crypt and they go, what's inside this? And what do they find? One of these. This is called a system on a chip. And if you're a Raspberry Pi guy, you may realize you've got one of these. It's basically a small computer, and it's got a Wi-Fi or whatever it is. They come with Linux and they have a bit of hardware, and they're everywhere. Okay. The problem was this wasn't the official one. So somehow this company had got a TV that had an unexpected behavior that their manufacturers said they shouldn't be there. And now they have this Wi-Fi gateway that they weren't expecting, unsecured, just available, which you think is pretty bad, but it gets worse. Because this little device phoned home. So when it turned on, they discovered that it would make a call to an IP address and give out some geolocation. So that means that somebody could drive up to their building, because now they know where they are, and have unfettered access to their network. And this is a true story. And the thing is that there are many, many devices that we plug into our networks, whether they're intranet or otherwise, even at home, where they have been compromised. Sometimes it's just because the system has there's no way of updating the passwords, and sometimes it's malicious. And so TVs are one of them, but also things like printers. If you think about the printers you might have that you go scans, or printer scanners where you take a copy of something and email it to yourself, then that can be compromised. Or even the fact that you're sending data to a printer to be printed, you're giving the printer the data. You imagine the number of times you printed out something confidential. So the question really is, who's watching you? So if you want to know more about this, I plan to do it at something like this at the London Java Conference Unconference, which will be coming soon. Just keep watching. Otherwise, thank you and good night.
Good night after a message like that. That's scary, Steve.
Yeah. How do have I stopped sharing?
That is. Oh, do you know what? I feel safer not knowing stuff like this, and just believing that all my data in the cloud is all safe. And
did I stop sharing? You're
still sharing, mate. You're still sharing.
Lovely Mountain View.
Because I can't find the, where's it gone? Somebody may have to stop me sharing.
Maybe you've stopped sharing, but an evil device on your network's still doing it.
Yes.
This is it. This is it. Now I don't know what to trust. Basically, any error that I send now, I'm going to blame on things like that. Does anyone have any questions for Steve on that rather eerie story?
I have a question. What on earth can we say as individuals or as companies that aren't very focused on security to the point of paranoia? What on earth can we do to protect ourselves from this sort of attack?
Well, the simple thing is being aware. All of this is about being aware. Means that when you make choices, you can think about, well, what's going on. So the simple answer is some of these devices, these IOC devices, it's almost impossible to defend. You just have to accept that that will be, and the reason is because right now all the things, these devices are embedded. The system on the chips come from manufacturers who are doing it for a price point. It's very rare that they will be physically hacked, but a lot of these devices to have old root passwords that everybody knows, and there's no way of changing them because there's no way of getting at the device. So honestly, if you have a smart device, then you have to understand you could be taking that risk. And the best thing you can do is be aware of it and decide how much you want to do something about it. Buy from good suppliers and ask the people who provide your scanner printer what their vulnerability update process is. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. The simple answer is all we're trying to do is make people aware that these are possibilities. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Sorry, I don't have any good news.
Fair play. Cheers.
Frightening stuff. Okay, well, thank you everyone for tuning in and being with us. So at this point, that's the end of the lightning talk. So if you only came to watch the lightning talks, then you are free to go. But we like to have these events divided into two parts. So we have with us, actually we have a number of experienced speakers, but we have one specifically that we've invited to be here with us today, Jim Gough. So Jim has spoken at the LJC for, I don't know, Jim, 10 years, something like 11 years, 12 years, something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
He's a speaking legend within the LJC, executive director and developer at Morgan Stanley, and has spoken at most Java related conferences, and has got some great stories to share. So we wanted to invite Jim on just to really answer any of your questions. Anyone sitting there thinking about getting more involved in speaking, wanting to know what it takes to step onto the conference circuit or just get into his brain and find out what he does. So Jim, if I could just ask quickly, just if you got any general advice or anything to share with the new speakers today and the people that might be thinking about it, yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, definitely. So yesterday I was at the Microsoft Java conference. I was making a lot of noise on it on Twitter about it. And there was a talk by Bruno Souza, who actually brought something up, Barry, that you were talking about right at the beginning, which was why do people get into talking and how do you get your career to move forward? So I'm going to I'll send out the link to the talk because I don't want to kind of ruin the whole thing. But one of the things he was talking about was, well, how do you kind of build this idea of responsibility, and how do you build this idea of trust within the community. So people trust you to take on slightly better roles and sort of advance your career or even just get out there. And it all came down to this idea of sharing and collaboration. And the way that you can do that is there are many ways of doing it. So you can do that through writing blog posts. You can do that through like doing small lightning talks. You do it through doing conference talks. And I think that really like the way in which you presented it came right back to what you were saying around, well, why do people get involved and why do those people that do get involved in community and do this kind of outreach and sharing and sort of take some of the steps that Helen was talking about. It's really quite scary to begin with, but taking that first step and getting out there and being open to knowing that you're going to do something wrong. Like that's definitely going to happen, and it's completely fine. That idea of a safe space within community, and that idea that the community is very forgiving, I think is also an important one. I certainly remember doing one of the worst talks I've ever given at Jack's London. And for people that haven't been to Jack's London before, it's a good conference, but it's a very different conference because the audience is different. So you get a different audience at Jack's. So you would get the Java Unconference, for example, where it's like, I guess you can make a joke quite easily, and it's a bit corporate. So we did a talk that was basically half an hour of jokes. And it didn't go down very well because half an hour of jokes when people don't want to hear jokes is actually quite a difficult situation to be in. And it's fine because that talk is recorded somewhere. It's hidden away, like from any public record that I have. But it's still out there, and you think back to it, and at the time I was like, oh shit, there's a talk out there about this me doing something that I think people perceive to be bad. Nobody's ever mentioned that since, because you can go on and you can rebuild, you can do more things, and ultimately you're only going to find, I think it was Sam's point around finding your own style and what fits for you. Like that's the way of finding, like, I guess, being comfortable. And there was another great talk and the great keynote yesterday about community and I guess building within the community your own, like being yourself essentially, and making sure that is part of what you're doing. And I think that's really important. I think that idea of being comfortable to get up on the stage and to have people accept who you are and what you're saying, it wasn't something that came naturally to me. And I was actually really quite nervous about getting up on stage for the first time and talking about anything technical. I would have been quite happy to get up and talk about anything else, actually, I think. I'm not sure if I'd actually been pressed to do that, whether I would have or not. But I think that's really important. And I think if you try and copy, for example, a particular individual style, that could be fine to get started with, but it might not be something that you're comfortable with. So you ultimately end up finding, I think, the best thing to do in these events, if you're sat there thinking, oh, I'm not sure if I want to do this or not, is crib from lots of other people. Like, look at what they're doing and how they're presenting. Think about, could you present like that? Or what would you present like if you were to present? And then ultimately that's a way to get started and find your own balance and essentially find your own style and look to be yourself within your talks and within the content that you present. So the first thing I would say, so this is a really rambling answer, which probably takes the most of Q&A, so apologies, is to always approach it with like thinking that you can be confident within the content that you're going to present, but also confident with yourself presenting that content. And I think that's really important to long-term success in just being able to get up in any situation and talk.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jim. By the way, as well, I've put something on the notes, but if anyone's got any questions to ask Jim, feel free to just unmute your mic and ask away, or whack it down on the thing that, in fact, I've just got something from Craig. What do you think provides greater value back to the Java community then, Jim? Code or talks? All right, so yeah, Java community, code or talks? Really, really good question, of course, and a difficult one to answer. I would say, there's definitely a need for both. So I think the idea of just contributing code to a project, and I know quite a few people in the Java community that do that. They basically just want to code. I think that's fine. And it kind of goes down to this, like I would sort of twist the conversation, because it's not just what provides value to the community, but it's also what provides value to you as an individual. So for example, if you're going to be really interested and motivated to code
like from 6 till 9 p.m. after you finish on your day job or whatever else you're doing, and that's a good thing, because that's going to be what you enjoy, and it's going to be what you can sustain and what you can essentially do. If you're like me and you get to the end of the day of coding and you can't think about writing another line of code, but you could think about doing a talk or starting to put some content together for a blog, then you should do that. And I think there is value in both, and there is value to the Java community in both. And code, in some ways, unless you can understand it and communicate about it, isn't worth it anyway. So there are many situations where you'll find one person will quite happily write some code and someone else will talk about it, and I think that's okay as well. So ultimately, like, I think you've got to find something that you want to do. There is value in both. There's value, but there is only value in yourself to what you want to do. And actually, this is something I've done both sides of. So when I was basically a speaker doing technical training 12 hours a day for basically 4 years, I actually, the only thing I wanted to do in the evening was code. Like, I didn't really want to go and present again, because if I'd been on, so I used to go down to Bloomberg, I'd leave my house at 5:15 in the morning. I'd be down there at sort of 7:45, and then I'd be presenting and helping and mentoring all day. And then if trying to think about then doing that again in the evening would have been too much. So for me, the way that my community balanced then was coding. That's what I enjoyed doing. And then when I went back into coding full time, so when I switched back to being a developer, I actually found I wanted to talk about the stuff I was doing again. And I think depending on what you're doing and what your kind of like day job is, let's say, it goes in cycles, because the problem is when you spend 4 years talking about something, you might not have done something for 4 years, and then you need to learn something to talk about again. So you actually need to find a balance personally of something that you can remain passionate about, learn about as well actively, and then share that. And it's kind of, that to me is the nice balance and the tricky balance that you want to try and find.
I think that's such good advice. And I think from when we had the Q&A before with Jim, that was, you were one of the first people that said that, like when we were asking about what to talk about speak about something you're passionate about. It all came about something that you're interested in, something you're passionate about, and that's how you get the energy to do it. So yeah, no, it's
I really liked this with Bruno's talk yesterday. It's because, you know, it's kind of like, you've got to take responsibility to do it, right? Nobody is going to write your talk for you. Well, they might do if you ask them nicely. I think I probably would give people talks if they were really struggling and they wanted the talk to just present. Ask me, I probably got something you could do. But the thing is going to onward from that starting point, you know, it's going to be down to you, and likely it's going to be down to you sacrificing something else in your life to do, like to prepare a talk. And if that's kind of like, it could be whatever you enjoy doing, it could be that's your free time ultimately that you're going to have to give away. And I think that's the challenging thing. Like, if it's all about, you've got to take the responsibility to do that. You've got to take the responsibility to build the talk. Like, every single one of the talks that we've seen today has had effort put in. And Steve might have put his slides together 90 minutes before the talk, but you can guarantee he's been thinking about his creepy TV for weeks. I'm not sure how he even watches the thing. So there is that kind of, everybody has put something into what they've shared, and it came across. But you've got to do the same thing. And, you know, what are you going to drop off to do that? And if it's something you're not interested in or don't really want to do, I can tell you that will go right to the bottom of your list of things to do, and it won't get done.
So true. Does anyone got any questions for Jim?
I do. I have a question about making mistakes. So let's see, mistakes I've made in the last 24 hours. Typos on Twitter, completely can't take those back. Screwing up my my last slide here. Mistakes I've made in the last week, forgetting to mute my YouTube live stream when I had StreamYard here, and nightmare, hearing myself. I tend to just go, it's fine, and move on, and then I overthink it for at least the next 24 hours, maybe 48 if it was a bad mistake. Do you have any kind of techniques or tips to help new speakers such as myself manage those? Inevitable for me. I don't know if they're inevitable for everyone, but definitely inevitable for me.
Yeah, so I mean, I think this it's a very personal topic, because you can either go with taking things really to heart if they go wrong, and I definitely used to do that and get probably quite more upset about it than I should do, I think. I think like the way that you handled, for instance, that's I didn't even notice that happened. Actually, it's just one of those things. It happens as a speaker, just like the person who was doing the live demo. And then as soon as he said live demo, his
the demo gods were like, haha.
Yeah, I mean, it's always going to happen. And I think anybody that's been in that situation will know that that's the case. I think when I was speaking at QCon this year, the front part of the stage fell off as I was giving the presentation. And it's just kind of, I think, there is what happens when you're presenting. I think the main thing is to try and let it, let it go, continue with the content. If you need to think about it after, that's fine. But whilst you're actually presenting, it shouldn't matter, and you've got to try and, I don't know if people, like, you'll probably notice this as you do longer talks. I was trying to explain this to somebody a couple of days ago. When you're giving a long talk, there can be kind of like 5 to 10 minutes where you just don't realize that you're actually giving a talk. You're just talking, and then you suddenly think, oh, I'm giving a talk. It's like the mind has gone into like an automated mode of putting that through. So I think there is that kind of like, when it's on the stage, what happens is fine, and I think totally fine if things go wrong, and I think it's accepted. When you write something, it's a little bit more tricky, I think, because things like Twitter is a good example. And I used to be, I noticed, because I was just putting out loads of tweets and stuff over the last few days, I noticed the typos in there afterwards. I was like, well, nobody's really complained about the typo there, so it's okay. But the way I've started to do this is all of the posts that I wrote whilst the conference was going on, I'm sure that they're littered with typos. But I just wanted to get the content out there. And I think it's what is the value in the content that you're sharing. And if it's kind of like the talk about communities yesterday, if one person reads that and goes and watches Bruno's video and then goes on to do something great, that's what the point of that was. And I think it's, there are certain situations where if it's going to a publisher, for instance, you want it to be absolutely bang on. But if it's not, then I think the idea of perfection in what we're spending our free time in sharing is it shouldn't be as high of a bar. And I think it's all about maybe giving yourself a break, because
having spent 20 years in tech writing, I struggle with the giving myself a break part. I should be good at this stuff. So yeah, that's cool. Thank you.
But I think if you think about technical writing, and it's something obviously I've done with the books that I've been working on, the number of iterations that you go over, like, I mean, for people that haven't written tech books before, the most valuable piece of advice, and if you're writing Markdown, I think it's the same, is you write each sentence on one line, and the tool will pull it all up into a paragraph. But the idea is that you can go and interrogate each sentence one by one. And I've got tip. Like that to do.
So I write my blogs in Markdown, so I could try that.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's been, I've done that with a few. So I'm mentoring somebody who's writing a book for the first time at the moment as well. And they've started to do that as well. It's like, this is great. I can actually like focus on one thing, see if it all makes sense individually, and then does the paragraph pull together properly. And then but that's not what you're going to do necessarily for your blog, or if you're writing something up. I think that there are things that are like different grades of like what you have to focus on depending on the medium of delivery. I guess is where this is going. And I know you mean if you come from one kind of like side of things. It's like if you write code and you have 100% unit test coverage, like that's kind of like, there is no argument that is working from a test perspective and everything else. It's very difficult to unit test a talk.
True that. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, you can only test in production.
Exactly.
So Jim, I know we're closing in on past here. I've got one more question, if that's okay. And sure. I'm interested to get you to answer this. And I tend to get a lot of people to answer this question because almost everyone that signs up to the aspiring speakers groups seems to come at this kind of topic from one angle, and it's how do I convince people that they have something that is worth sharing? How do I convince people, or how does anyone become convinced that there is something within, there is a talk within them that other people would want to hear?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I see you've been working on that one for a few weeks now. I think the good thing. So I'm going to just use an example, which I don't think people mind me using. So I recently went to a talk that was not on something I expected to be interested in, which was about. It was all about sort of the energy usage of computing. So obviously, like big data centers. You know, the reason, sorry, it wasn't that I wasn't interested in it, but my kind of angle at going at stuff is performance, right? How do I get something to run really quick, use loads of power, and just be quick, right? That's what really interests me. So I was like, well, why would I want to go listen to a talk on not doing that? And actually, going and listening to that talk has really inspired a new part of something that I'm really interested in now, which is looking at the greenness of Java from the perspective of performance. So can we actually, like, as a performance metric, rather than optimizing for throughput, low latency, what about if you optimize for lower energy consumption? And what does that mean? And actually, in many cases, the same things that you apply for your code to run quick by removing things that you don't need is also what you'd want to apply for a greenness in the software that you're about to execute. So this has kind of sparked some conversations in the background. It's a blog post that I'm working on actively at the moment, which is, how do we make Java greener? And if we do that, what are the overall implications going to be for Java running in big data centers, where maybe you sacrifice certain performance characteristics to optimize for things being more green, essentially. And so the reason why, the reason for that example is because something that I felt that I wasn't going to be interested in, or maybe wouldn't have gone out and looked for a talk on that, actually has now changed my complete perspective on what I want to do over the next year. And why is that important? Because the person who came to talk to me about that was somebody who is 6 months into their career, had just started working at a company, and they were interested to see what I would think about their idea. And the talk was great. And I think, if you think about, well, what impact is your talk going to have? And I guess we're all looking to share our ideas and share what we're doing for our own motivational purposes. It can have like a really big impact by just sharing a 5-minute talk. And I think some of the talks that we've seen today, where people are talking about their experiences, like their personal experience with the community, personal experience with writing talks, and just putting themselves out there a bit and trying to get comfortable with that approach of working in the open, essentially. They're really important talks because people relate to them and can then take them and essentially like feel confident to actually deliver a talk themselves. So I think, your talk could be something that it adds value to the community, whatever talk that you give, and to individuals, it could add a huge amount of value, because ultimately, I think Helen made a really good point. Like, you could be on the same journey as somebody else who is 2 meters away from you in terms of what they're doing, but you can learn from each other, and you can learn from people who are ahead, but you can also learn from people who are just starting. And I think like it's our responsibility as leaders in the community to be willing to listen. And I think this is why these sessions are so good, regardless of where you are in your experience and within your career.
Brilliant. Thanks, Jim. Appreciate that. Well, guys, having all heard that, I hope that we can count on some of you getting involved in future Lightning Talk sessions. It's a point where everyone normally logs off. So is there anyone that hasn't spoken before that would be interested in speaking at our next event? Anyone? Jim, Ola, Craig, Ahmad, Vince, Sam. Oh, Sam, of course you are, and Daniele. If any of you are interested in coming forward for a future one, then please let me know. We'd love to keep getting some new fresh faces and fresh voices on this as well. So write to me. I'm at bc@recworks.co.uk, or to Dom Carlo, and you've probably had 2 or 3 emails from us already today. So please do track us down. And get involved if you want anything from mentoring or a workshop or anything like that. Then we can hook you up. So thank you everyone for tuning in today. Thank you to our speakers and obviously to Jim. And we will see you next time. Cheers, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.